on Troll taking a different elevator, leaving 5 minutes earlier. Laughing a little louder with coworkers so no one would ask why she looked distant. She told herself distance was maturity. Silence was strength. But the message broke through. All of it. Emma leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling lights. Daniel had never been impulsive. Every word he spoke usually came after thought. If he was asking her to meet him, something important must be waiting. Or something painful. She stood, slipped her coat over her shoulders, and walked toward the elevator without giving herself time to reconsider. The ride upward felt longer than it should have. Each floor passed with a soft chime, counting time she could still turn back. She watched her reflection in the metal door's gum face, steady eyes, no sign of the questions racing inside her. She reminded herself she was not fragile. She had survived disappointment before. The doors opened onto the top conference floor. The hallway lights were dimmed, set to evening mode. Most of the rooms were dark, chairs stacked neatly, whiteboards erased clean. The space felt untouched, as if waiting. At the far end, one room glowed with warm light. Emma's steps echoed as she walked, her heart beat faster with every foot closer. She wondered what she would say when she saw him. Hello felt too small. Why now felt too sharp. She stopped outside the door for a brief moment, hand hovering near the handle. She could still leave. She could pretend she never saw the message. Life would continue, orderly and quiet. She opened the door. Daniel stood near the window, his back turned, city lights stretching behind him like a living map. He looked older than she remembered, though only slightly. Not tired, changed, as if time had pressed its thumb gently but firmly on him. He turned when he heard the door close. Their eyes met, and the years between them disappeared too quickly. To prepare for, I wasn't sure you'd come, Daniel said. Emma crossed her arms, grounding herself. You didn't give me much detail, I know. He paused. I wasn't sure how. The room held the kind of silence that carried meaning. It was not awkward. It was heavy. Emma took a few steps forward, stopping near the table in the center of the room. Why here? She asked. Why now? Daniel looked at the floor for a moment, then back at her. 'Cause this was the only place quiet enough. And because I ran out of excuses. Her breath caught, but she did not let it show. Weeks earlier, their last conversation had ended without resolution. No anger, no clear ending. Just words that drifted apart and never returned. Emma had told herself that unanswered moments were easier than painful truths. Daniel gestured toward the table. I need you to see something. Emma hesitated, then moved closer. The table was covered with items carefully arranged. Old meeting notes, a folded photo, a thin folder. Nothing dramatic at first glance. Then she recognized a familiar blue pen mark on a scrap of paper. Her handwriting. She reached for it slowly, as if it might disappear. 'Twas a note she had written during a late project night years ago. It's a quiet confession she never intended to share. She had forgotten it existed. I found these when I was clearing my old office, Daniel said. They were in a drawer I never opened again. Emma swallowed. You read them? Yes. He did not apologize. He did not defend himself. He simply stated the truth. Her chest tightened, but not with anger. With exposure? I never meant for you to see that, she said. I know, Daniel replied. But once I did, I couldn't pretend anymore. Emma looked through the rest of the items. A calendar page marked with dates she remembered. A photo from a company retreat. The two of them standing too close, smiling at something only they could see. A printed email draft, UNSENT. Each piece told a story she had lived quietly, carefully, believing she was alone in it. I thought you were moving on, she said, her voice low. You seemed so certain, so ready. Daniel gave a small, tired smile. I looked certain because I didn't want to be a problem. I thought if I stayed quiet, the feeling would pass. And did it? She asked. He shook his head once. No. The word landed gently, but it changed the air. Emma turned away, facing the window. The city lights blurred slightly, though she did not cry. She focused on breathing, on staying present. You should have said something, she said. I know. Daniel stood beside her now, not too close. And you should have too. She laughed softly, without humor. We were both careful. That was the problem. They stood there, watching traffic move like slow rivers below. Life continuing without them. I didn't invite you here to ask for anything, Daniel said. I just couldn't carry this by myself anymore. I needed you to know that what you felt was real, that it mattered. Emma closed her eyes for a brief second. Validation was powerful. But it also reopened doors she had sealed for a reason. Knowing doesn't make it easy, she said. I didn't expect it to, he replied. She turned to face him again, studying his expression. It's not trying. To convince her he was not pushing. That restraint was what made everything harder. What do you want now? She asked. Daniel took a slow breath. Honesty. For once, she nodded. Then, here's mine. I cared more than I should have. I still do, but I built a life around letting go. I'm not asking you to, he said. I just didn't want silence to be the last thing between us. Emma looked back at the table, at the quiet proof of something unfinished. The past was no longer quiet. It had found its voice, a notification. Buzzed on her phone, breaking the moment. She ignored it. The building lights dimmed slightly, signaling the hour. Time, once again, reminding them it did not wait. I should go, Emma said, though she did not move. Daniel nodded. I understand. She gathered her coat, then paused. I'm glad you told me, she said, even if I don't know what it means yet. That's enough for now, he replied. Emma walked toward the door, her steps slower than before. She stopped with her hand on the handle. Daniel, she said without turning, next time don't wait so long. He smiled, though she did not see it. I won't. She left the room, the door closing softly behind her as she walked down the quiet hallway. Emma felt something shift, not resolution, not certainty, but awareness. The past had spoken, and the future was no longer silent. The elevator doors closed, carrying her downward, while above her a truth remained waiting. Emma hesitated outside the softly glowing room. The hallway was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt alive, filled with expectation. She could still leave. She could pretend she never received Daniel's message, slip back into the familiar routine of work, coffee breaks, and evenings spent alone. But something inside her pushed forward, curiosity, hope, or maybe just the desire to see the truth for herself. She opened the door and stepped inside. Daniel was standing near the window, looking out at the city. The skyscrapers sparkled like tiny constellations, lights dancing on the river. For a moment, Emma said nothing. She just observed him. He looked calm, but his posture carried wet attention she hadn't noticed before. Perhaps he had carried it every day, quietly, alone. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said without turning. I almost didn't, Emma admitted, moving. A few steps forward, the floor creaked softly under her shoes. Daniel finally turned to face her. His expression was neutral, yet every line in his face carried a story of time and emotion. She realized she had missed seeing him like this, not just the surface smiles at the office, but the Daniel who thought before speaking. The Daniel who weighed every word carefully. I asked you here because I need you to see something, he said, motioning toward the table. Emma walked closer. The table was neatly arranged with items that felt familiar yet strange. Old notes, photographs, and a thin folder. Her eyes widened as she recognized her own handwriting on one piece of paper, a letter she had written long ago, a letter she had never sent. She had forgotten it existed entirely. Daniel spoke softly. I found these while clearing out my office. I didn't know you felt that way back then. I thought I was alone in it. Emma's throat tightened. The letter contained her words carefully, chosen but raw with emotion. It was her younger self, vulnerable and hopeful, speaking to a version of Daniel that might never have existed. And yet, here it was, real and undeniable. "I didn't think it mattered," she said. "I thought you had moved on. I tried to move on too, or at least I told myself I did." Daniel shook his head. "I never did." Her chest tightened again, and she felt her heartbeat in her ears. She had imagined many scenarios for seeing him again, but this truth laid bare, quiet and honest, was different. It left her almost breathless. Daniel gestured toward the photographs. Emma leaned closer. She saw them clearly now, snapshots from past projects, retreats, team-building exercises. In each photo, they were always near each other, smiles natural, body language unguarded. Moments she had thought were private, invisible, were now quietly preserved. "These were always here," he said. "I just never opened them." Emma turned to look at him, her mind racing. She remembered every conversation, every laugh they had shared, every coffee break stolen in between meetings. And now she realized the truth. Daniel had carried the same feelings silently, just as she had. "Why show me now?" she asked, voice soft. "Because I couldn't keep pretending," he replied. "I thought if I stayed silent the feeling would go away. But it didn't. Not for me, not for you, I think." Emma's mind flashed back to those silent weeks, months even. How she had avoided him, how she had built walls between them, how she had told herself distance was strength. All those efforts felt fragile now, like paper against the wind. "I shouldn't have kept quiet either," she admitted. "I thought I was protecting myself, but I was only avoiding the truth." Daniel nodded slowly. "The truth has a way of finding us anyway." The city lights reflected in the glass behind him, painting both of them in a soft glow. It was the kind of moment she had only ever imagined in her quiet thoughts, a moment suspended between what had been and what might still be. "I don't know what to do with this," Emma said. Her voice wavered slightly. "I can't go back in time. I can't pretend it didn't exist." "I'm not asking you to go back," Daniel said. "I just wanted you to see it. To know that what you felt, what I felt, wasn't imagined. It was real. And maybe that's enough for now." Emma felt a lump in her throat. Enough for now. That was something she could handle. That was something that felt possible. The idea of rushing forward, of making decisions in that quiet room felt overwhelming. But recognition, honesty, understanding that she could hold. She glanced at the letter again. Words she had poured onto paper years ago seemed to pulse with new life. Daniel's eyes followed hers, and she realized he had read every line with care. Every feeling she had hidden from the world had been acknowledged. That acknowledgement carried weight she had never expected. "Do you regret it?" she asked suddenly, gesturing at the table. "All of this, seeing it now?" "No," he said immediately. "Anything, I wish I had done this sooner. But maybe we weren't ready. Maybe we needed time to understand what this meant." Emma nodded slowly. She understood. Life had moved forward for both of them. People change, circumstances change, but some truths linger. Some feelings survive silence. "I don't know what happens next," she admitted. "I don't know if we can just pick up from here." Daniel stepped closer, still keeping a respectful distance. "We don't have to know everything, right? Now, sometimes knowing the truth is enough to start something new, or to heal something old." She looked at him for a long moment. His sincerity was impossible to ignore. There was no manipulation, no pressure, only honesty. And for the first time in weeks, she felt her heart unclench, felt the tightness around her chest loosen just slightly. What if we had never met again? She whispered, almost to herself. Then these moments, these truths, would have remained unspoken, Daniel said softly. "And I think we would have carried the weight alone, and perhaps we did for too long." Emma turned toward the window, letting her eyes drift over the sparkling city. She thought about the paths they had both take in the choices that had led them here, and the quiet longing that had never truly left. She realized that this wasn't a moment for grand gestures. It was a moment for recognition, for understanding, for honesty. She finally met his eyes again. "I can't promise anything," she said, "except that I'm willing to face this truth with you, even if it doesn't lead anywhere." "That's more than enough," Daniel replied. The room felt quiet again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was full of understanding, full of emotion, full of possibilities. They stood together without moving, without needing to speak, letting the weight of the past settle and the quiet hope of the future take root. Emma realized then that life doesn't always give second chances, but it does give clarity if you're willing to face it. And in that room with Daniel, with the evidence of years past laid before her, she felt clarity for the first time. A soft sound from the hallway reminded her that time continued outside. The room that the city below was alive, moving, breathing. Yet within that quiet space, a new story was beginning, one built not on illusions, not on unspoken words, but on truth. Daniel finally spoke, breaking the silence. "Whatever happens next, I want it to start with honesty. No hiding, no pretending. Just us, as we are." Emma nodded. "I can do that. I can start there." They looked at each other, fully present, fully aware that the past had shaped them, but did not define them. It was a rare kind of peace, fragile, but real. "I guess we both have some catching up to do," Daniel said with a small smile. Emma returned the smile, feeling the tension in her chest ease just slightly. "Yes, but maybe we can take it one step at a time, no rush, no expectations." "Agreed," he said, his voice steady. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt a sense of calm she hadn't realized she was missing. They were not rushing toward anything. They were simply acknowledging what had existed, what still existed, and what could exist. The city lights outside shimmered, reflecting in their eyes, mirroring the possibilities. The past had spoken, the truth had been shared, and a new chapter quietly waited for them to write. Emma glanced at the table one last time, then turned back to Daniel. "Thank you," she said, "for showing me, for trusting me with this." He nodded. "And thank you for coming, for facing it with me." No one moved, no one spoke, and yet everything had shifted. The room that had once been quiet, almost lifeless, now hummed with something unspoken: connection, recognition, and the fragile spark of hope. Emma felt her heart pulse with the possibilities, the understanding, the truth. She realized that some moments don't need fireworks or dramatic gestures. Sometimes they just need honesty, presence, and courage. She turned toward the door finally, taking a deep breath. As she stepped into the hallway, she felt lighter. Not because the past was undone, not because answers were complete, but because she had faced it and it had not broken her. Daniel watched her leave, feeling a similar release. They had not solved everything. They had not promised forever. But they had acknowledged each other, the feelings that had endured, and the quiet power of truth. The door closed softly behind her. And for both of them, the city outside continued, bright and alive, while inside a quiet, unspoken understanding promised that some stories, if nurtured with honesty and care, could still find a way to bloom.